After 3 years of promising to get your power bill down by $275 a year, this week the Prime Minister finally forced to come clean, forced to admit that his modelling, the Reputex modelling, isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Instead, he now says the modelling, on which all his power bill promises are based on, has got nothing to do with him.
It's Reputex's modelling. It's Reputex's modelling.
You took ownership of that modelling.
It's Reputex's modelling from that time. It's Reputex's modelling based upon the circumstances at that time.
Now, for most of us, this power bill hit is crippling, and we know it's going to keep going up if Labor's return to office because of their emissions reduction targets. But if you live outside of our capital cities, there's not just power bill pain ahead of you, it's your community and your farming livelihood at stake, with Labor's renewables only energy plan. Massive wind turbines on some of Australia's best farming land or along our coast. Solar panels too. And ripping through paddocks, whether you agree to it or not, new transmission towers to get this so-called green power from their land, the bush, to the city. Now, this is happening across the country. But as I've reported from the ground, nowhere is it more pronounced than in Victoria, where a massive cross-border transmission line is being rolled out, with both the state and federal Labor governments riding roughshod over locals. Out in these communities, the anger is palpable. They're being ignored, treated as people with very little rights by Labor. And it's why last Friday, when there was a massive town hall meeting held in the small town of Kanya in Victoria's northwest, Sky News was there to support them. There to give voice for these locals too, were Nationals MP for the federal seat of Mallee, Anne Webster, State Shadow Energy Minister David Davis, and the federal counterpart, Energy Shadow Minister Ted O'Brien. Now, unlike Chris Bowen or anyone else from Labor, these pollies fronted up and they were happy to hear from concerned residents.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ted O'Brien. I'm not Chris Bowen. And with that, I'm going to leave now.
Surely, as part of cutting the Rewiring the Nation plan, your government would not follow the current government's folly and will axe V&I West immediately.
We reject Labor's plan for up to 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. Two, therefore, Peter Dutton announced last night that we intend to scrap Labor's $20 billion Rewiring Australia plan. I'm very proud, and I'll stand by it, and I'll fight it all the way to the election, the decision we've made to cancel that funding for Rewiring the Nation.
We are currently considered an inconvenience to be manipulated, patronised, misled, and most disgracefully, the last people that the board and management of AEMO thought should be informed. Will the Coalition commit to a wholesale review and proper inquiry into the role and functions of AEMO when you get into government? Thank you.
Reform and change, yes. I think system planning is one thing. I think another issue is governance. AEMO doesn't report to the federal government, so we can't call them in to Senate estimates. But David can't call them in either. This is a thing, right?
We're really interested, why is government subsidising this renewable bill? These things wouldn't be built without government support.
Can you cancel these projects? Are you prepared to do what Daniel Anders did and wipe up the project and suffer the consequences, the loss of money? At what point and how hard is it to unwind these projects? At what stage can they be unwound?
You, through those words, have put us on notice that we must deliver on the words we've spoken today, and we expect nothing less.
Joining me now, the Victorian MP who organised this meeting, Anne Webster. And well, good on you, particularly for getting the shadow ministers, both of them there, because both of them can end up being the energy ministers after the state election in Victoria, and of course the one we're currently fighting here in Victoria federally. Chris Bowen nowhere to be seen, no one else from Labor bothering to turn up, but I would hope you've given your community some heart.
Look, it was an incredibly important meeting and took months to organise, of course. It was very rewarding to have the community able to speak to the shadow ministers face to face and to hear their responses. So I am very grateful that both shadow ministers came, and I certainly will continue to bat for my community, because it's our communities out in Mallee who are being impacted by these disastrous plans by Labor.
Yeah, well, I'll stand with you, honestly, because this is my whole stomping ground, and these people have not been heard for so long. I know you fought for them, but it's taken a long time for this to be in the national issue. It should be. One of the biggest issues, obviously, is this transmission line, the V&I line. For green power, for people in the city, it'll desecrate their land, these farmers and their land. They won't get any benefit from this. This is for Green voters in Sydney and Melbourne. It's not just an easy question of what you scrap and where. I want to play a bit of about what Ted O'Brien had to say to explain to viewers that this is deliberately locked up by Labor. Have a listen.
Then in terms of your question as to, what happens, V&I West, is there funding from Rewiring the Nation? Why wouldn't we make a commitment here and now? We do not have access to the information of knowing whether money from Rewiring the Nation has been allocated, how much, under what contract terms.
I guess he's being honest there, and we want that from our politicians, Anne, but I guess the good news is the $200 billion of money for Rewiring the Nation, you're not going to proceed with that. The $28,000 of transmission lines, Peta Credlin says in his budget reply speech, not going to proceed with that. If we have nuclear power for Australia, if we up our gas until the nuclear is ready, all of this stuff is not needed at anywhere near the scale as Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese are planning.
Absolutely. And for farmers who just want to grow food and fibre to export, and it's a hot topic today, to the world, and to feed our nation and to clothe our nation, this is a really important failure by Labor to understand just how these transmission lines and the wind turbines and the solar farms at industrial scale impacts growing that food and fibre. And my hope and prayer before this election, Peter, is that the people in the city would begin to understand what these plans and what these proposals are doing to our regional communities, because they are hurting. There are so many people who cry on my shoulder. There are so many communities who are divided over this, and it's just tragic.
We spoke to some of the people that were there. They had this to say.
I understand policy and legislation is a complex machine to work within, but there are some very clear projects and policies that need to be introduced.
We'll certainly be looking at the federal election at the moment, but we're also turning our head towards the state election, trying to help support the Dutton government and the Littleproud National Party to get through this election, hopefully with a clear majority.
We're great. We definitely wouldn't have got the two people here today if it wasn't for Anne, both David and Ted. It was great, her efforts to get them here. It's a ripper to have someone like that out in this area, and it's basically from Anne's efforts. There's people in that shearing shed right there who are prepared to go to jail for this cause.
The strength's there to unite and fight from now and from the start, from all the way through. We know we're getting listened to, which is probably not quite enough, but we have been in Parliament, we've been into the offices, and we need to make sure that none of these policies go ahead on our land.
Part of the reason, Anne, we'll leave it here, but part of the reason why they're trying to run over the top of your communities is because you are in a relatively safe seat, because Labor thinks you don't matter, your people don't matter, because they don't vote Labor.
It's hard to deny that that's what it feels like. It certainly feels like that to my constituents, and, hence my call for shadow ministers to come to Mallee and speak to my constituents and give them hope. Because if we don't have hope going forward, the whole country will feel the brunt of this.
Absolutely, and we've got to grow more and more in Australia, not send our farmers to the wall. Thank you, Anne.